Jesper Bratt has re-signed with the Devils organization long-term. It is for real this time. Holla at the Brat Pack or put the Brat symbol up in the air. One of the core pieces is here to stay for a long period of time. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody. 8 years of Bratt.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Remember what I said a few episodes ago? When one domino piece falls, the others will follow suit. Well, the first domino piece for the Devils to fall was the Damon Severson trade, getting him off the books and unfortunately having to part ways with the longest tenured player on the Devils roster, but it had to be done from a business standpoint. And now the second domino has fallen, and it's been a long time coming, but Jesper Bratt has been extended by the New Jersey Devils. Now, in the previous episode, I talked about a theory put out there by Pierre LeBrun in which he was saying that maybe Jesper Bratt's camp was looking for a short-term deal so that way Bratt could test free agency sooner rather than later, so that way he could get that lucrative deal. I said I was open to it if it was like 4 to 5 years. 3 years might have been pushing it, but I was just like, any way to get Jesper Bratt signed for at least a few more years, I'll be satisfied with it. But LeBron was also saying during that same time period that Tom Fitzgerald and company did in fact offer Jesper Bratt an 8-year extension. And I was like, I'm okay with that as long as I know like what the money is going to be like, because I said Bratt could go from underrated to overrated with a snap of the finger. But it finally came into fruition. Jesper Bratt has signed an 8-year, $63 million total contract with the New Jersey Devils organization. Coincidence that the money is worth $63 million after these 8 years? I think not, because as you guys know, that is Jesper Bratt's jersey number, 63. So I found that quite interesting. So in today's episode, I was given some facts courtesy of the Devils PR team. We're going to go over that. We have a quote from Tom Fitzgerald. I'm going to give my initial thoughts to it, and I'm also going to talk about how this signing affects the New Jersey Devils from now and beyond during the course of the offseason. Then in the second segment, we'll talk about the contract in general, and I'll give you guys my thoughts as to whether or not it was a good investment for the Devils. And then in the third and final segment, I know you guys are probably asking a lot of questions in regard to like how the contract situation is going to look like for a few other players, particularly with Timo Meier. Well, I'll clarify that once again in the third and final segment. So let's begin with some facts courtesy of the Devils PR team. So they said the New Jersey Devils announced today that the team has agreed to terms with for Jesper Bratt on an 8-year contract. So from 2023, 2024 to 2030, 2031, worth $63 million with an annual average salary of $7,875,000. So they gave the contract breakdown as to how much he would be paid annually. And according to David Pagnotta of the fourth period, he says that half of Jesper Bratt's $63 million contract is paid in bonuses. He also added to clarify, this is a spread out over the term of his deal, but $31.5 million of his $63 million will be paid out in signing bonus each year. Bratt completed his 6th season with the Devils organization after the forward began his NHL career with the Devils during the 2017-2018 season. The 5'10", 175-pound winger recorded a consecutive 73-point season after Bratt earned 32 goals, 41 assists this past year. Bratt's 32 goals, 8 power play goals, and his plus-minus rating of plus 14 marked new career highs. His overall goal total and power play goals both ranked second on the Devils' roster last season, while his 73 points ranked fourth. The left-handed shot set a franchise record for longest point streak from the start of the season after his stretch of 11 games with at least a point from October 13th to November 3rd. During that stretch, he was able to put up 16 points. He had 5 goals and 11 assists. He scored his 100th career NHL goal on March 19th at Tampa, a goal which was part of Bratt's first career hat trick for what it's worth. Bratt is also one of 10 players in franchise history who recorded 70 or more points in multiple seasons. He is also the first Devils player since Zach Parise did it in 2008, 2009 to 2009, 2010, who earned 70 or more points in consecutive seasons. Okay, so like I said, those are just some interesting facts courtesy of the Devils PR team. Tom Fitzgerald released a statement and he said, quote, "It was always a priority to keep Jesper Bratt here long term, and both parties are thrilled that a deal was completed. I value and commend the commitment Jesper has made to this organization. We believe that he is a special player and a key member for our core group of talent who will contribute towards the team's long-term success and organizational goal of bringing a Stanley Cup back to the New Jersey Devils." Okay, so we'll talk about what Jesper Bratt would potentially bring to the team momentarily, but let's just talk about how this signing affects the New Jersey Devils during the course of the offseason. So I would just say this, the hard part is over because I think getting Damon Severson off the books, that was relatively easy because I said that Severson is going to be highly sought after in a weak free agent market. So I knew that there was going to be some teams that were going to jump the gun first chance they would get to pursue Severson. And as we know, he was traded to the Blue Jackets organization, got paid, and the Devils were able to get a 3rd-round draft pick as a result. And the big question was like, how much is Jesper Bratt going to re-sign to? Because like I said moments ago, Pierre LeBrun was theorizing that his camp was looking for a short-term deal. There are rumors saying that Jesper Bratt is demanding anywhere from $8.5 million to $9 million, which he would have been paid annually more than Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. And obviously that sparked a debate amongst the Devils discourse because people are just like, okay, Bratt, we do want to have him back, but what would the asking price be? Like, what's considered too expensive? I predicted anywhere from maybe $6.5 million to at the most $8 million, but we'll talk about that in the second segment. But the hard part is over. The first domino piece to fall was that Severson trade, and now the second domino piece to fall was that Bratt contract, and now third up on the priority list for Tom Fitzgerald before July 1st hits and free agency begins, or before the start of the draft, which is in a few weeks, is to get Timo Meier extended. So 2 of the 3 priorities during the offseason are now completed at a relatively early date. So it's best to go into the offseason knowing what you got, what your cap situation is going to be like, and also who is committed for the long haul on this roster. Now, what does this mean for the offseason for the Devils? Because as we all know, Fitzgerald recently said during his exit interview that just because the Devils didn't have a first-round draft pick in this year's NHL draft doesn't mean they wouldn't get one. Well, now that Bratt is extended for a long period of time, I think this negates any chance of the Devils potentially getting a first-round draft pick. Now, I've seen crazier things happen, but if we just think about this logistically, we see that the Devils have a lot of players who are now signed to long-term deals, and they have some pending unrestricted free agents. You got Eric Haula, Tomas Tatar, Miles Wood, and Ryan Graves, but the fact of the matter is simply this. None of those players are worth a first-round draft pick, and the restricted free agent list for the Devils is more or less the same because when you look at the RFAs, you got Nathan Bastian, Jesper Boquist, Michael McLeod, Timo Meier is not even an option, Yegor Sharangovich, Kevin Ball, Mackenzie Blackwood. So once again, solid players, but let's face it, no opposing team is going to be like, oh, we're going to trade you our first-round draft pick for so-and-so player. The only player that came to mind was Jesper Bratt. I put out a theory and said that was probably Fitzgerald's way of telling Jesper Bratt's camp, saying like, look, if we can't get a deal done, we have no problem dealing you away because now we have Timo Meier to also worry about. So in terms of the first-round draft pick, personally, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think it worked out for the best for the Devils organization. Obviously, I did a few silly season discussion episodes in regard to maybe trading away Jesper Bratt's rights to somewhere if he was being hard-headed once again, because this was the 3rd time in the past 4 seasons in which Bratt did not have a contract lined up for next year. But like I said, hard part's over. and the offseason, the trades, I think it just pretty much puts everything out the door. Now, the Devils do have about $26.4 million in cap space, and obviously you still got to pay Timo Meier. You got to retain some of your other valuable assets, but just getting off to a good start as soon as the entire NHL season has come to an end, because as we all know, the Vegas Golden Knights were crowned champions, and now it is the offseason for all 32 teams. Devils got out and running in their offseason, and they were able to retain Jesper Bratt, this time long-term, so no more drama for the next few years, because Bratt has a full no-trade clause for seasons 2 through 5 of his deal. So Bratt is here for the long haul. Okay, so let's talk about Jesper Bratt's contract in general. So like I said, it is worth $63 million. It's an 8-year extension, and he's going to be paid about annually of $7,875,000. Now, the main question that everyone has, was it a good deal for the Devils? Because I projected anywhere from $6.5 million to about $8 million. People put out their own theories, and obviously we saw someone like Cole Caulfield get paid for by the Montreal Canadiens, but another contract that's sort of relatable to Bratt's new deal is Kevin Fiala. Now, remember, Kevin Fiala was high up on the priority list last offseason for the Devils, and now Bratt has a similar contract to Kevin Fiala, which is something I've been theorizing the last year or so, because I'm sure Jesper Bratt's agent saw the amount of money that Fiala was getting paid, and also someone like Brock Besser is getting paid, and he was like, I want something similar toward my client. And now I guess you could consider Bratt to be that Kevin Fiala type player that the Devils were yearning for, because this past season for the LA Kings, Fiala appeared in 69 games, which is something you have to take into consideration because he played in way less games compared to Bratt. He had 23 goals, 49 assists for a grand total of 72 points. So once again, similar statistical numbers, but 69 game appearances compared to Bratt's 82. It's a little different, but just putting that out there a little bit. And like I said, now that Caulfield got paid by the Canadiens as well, I'm sure Bratt's agent got on the phone with Fitzgerald, say, cough up the money, because we're seeing someone like Caulfield get his money, even though he hasn't really done anything spectacular in the league just yet, just so I don't get any angry Montreal Canadian fans. I'm not saying that Cole Caulfield is bad or anything, but let's face it, he hasn't reached his true capabilities quite yet. So the $1 million question is, well, I guess the $63 million question is like, am I happy with the contract for Jesper Bratt? Let's think about this, because now Jesper Bratt is going to be paid annually more than Nico Hischier, because Hischier's contract is 7 years, $50.75 million, which means he's being paid annually of $7,250,000, and he'll become an unrestricted free agent 2 years before Jesper Bratt is set to become an unrestricted free agent. Also worth mentioning that Jack Hughes will become an unrestricted free agent 1 year before Jesper Bratt, for what it's worth. Now, Bratt is getting paid more than Hischier, but he's just under the annual salary of Jack Hughes. And obviously people have their opinions. That some people are saying that's a good deal. Some people are saying it's a bad deal. Here are my thoughts on it. I think it was a decent deal for Tom Fitzgerald, because you may have slightly overpaid, but it's nothing alarming. So it's not a steal for the Devils organization, but I don't think it's a bad deal either, because I think these next few years are going to be the best of Jesper Bratt's career. And that's one of the things I was talking about in the previous episode. I'm not sure what his peak is going to be. I'm not sure how long until he hits his prime. I'm not sure if he's going to fizzle out towards the end of his contract. I really don't know. I'm not psychic. I'm not a fortune teller. But what I can say is that Bratt definitely has some good momentum going his way. So it's not the best deal in the world, but it's not worst case scenario either. Now, worst case scenario in my eyes is if Bratt passed the $8 million threshold, because now that's definitely going to ring the alarms in Timo Meier and his camp's head, because now they're going to be like, we want more money. So we saw you pay Bratt. We want to be paid just a little bit more. And we'll talk about that in the third and final segment. But when looking at it from a logistics standpoint, when comparing it to Jack Hughes' contract and Nico Hischier's contract, obviously Hughes originally signed an 8-year, $64 million extension. And now Bratt is being paid about $1 million less than Jack Hughes, and he's getting paid more than Nico Hischier, our captain. But here's the thing. Hughes signed his extension when Fitzgerald was in office. Hischier signed his extension when Shero was in office. So just putting that out there a little bit, different front office mentality. And obviously when Hughes and Hischier signed their extensions, it was before they really started to take big strides in their game. And I think that's what the front office is hoping for Jesper Bratt. Now, will he become an all-star? I don't really know. He was close last year, but he sort of hit a slump and he hit a wall at the wrong possible time. And for him to qualify for the all-star game, he would have had to have relied too much on the advanced analytics. So I don't really know in that regard. But what I do know is similar to what Tom Fitzgerald said during his statement, Bratt is definitely an essential core piece for this Devils organization. Now, obviously, the name of the game is to build the roster around Hischier and Hughes. But now, Bratt, it's better to have him on the roster than not have him on the roster, quite honestly, because I talked about a few silly season scenarios in which the Devils would have traded away Jesper Bratt's rights to maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs and gotten someone like William Nylander or Mitch Marner or something like that, and it would have created some uncertainty. But I'm glad that Bratt is now with the Devils organization, and the money is slightly high. Yes, I will admit that. But at the same time, it's not worst case scenario. It's not that bad. And the Devils still have plenty of cap space to work with, so that way they can re-sign Timo Meier and also get a few other assets to shapeshift their organization, so that way they can get back into playoff contention come next year. So final verdict, I do like the signing for Tom Fitzgerald. It definitely takes a huge burden off the organization's shoulders. It definitely just throws that speculation out the window in regard to Jesper Bratt and as to whether or not he's happy with the organization. We no longer have to hear the rumors. We no longer have to hear some of the players express their frustrations. And at the same time, while he's making more money than Hischier, he's under the Jack Hughes threshold, which I think was the ultimate goal. And for anybody who says this is a bad contract based on Jesper Bratt's playoff performance, look, I don't know how he'll do well in next year's Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know how he'll do in other playoff opportunities that he's been given. Yes, he had a very disappointing outing, but he still had a lot of upside and a lot of potential that he was able to showcase during the regular season, because it's the same thing I said for Vitek Vanecek. Yes, he did not have a good showing during the playoffs. That is a fact. Same with Jesper Bratt, but we cannot exonerate what they did during the regular season to get the Devils into the playoffs in the first place. So I get it. He did not have a good playoff performance, but a lot of players didn't exactly step up their games come playoff times. I can name like 3 or 4 other players who were kind of no-shows during the playoffs. It happens. I get it. But at the same time, we still need to just be open to the fact that Bratt definitely has a lot of upside, and I think his best years are right in front of him. Now, how long will he be able to continue it? I really don't know, but the Devils struck while the iron is hot, because he is coming off back-to-back seasons in which he put up 73 points, and that doesn't just happen. I'm sure a lot of teams would kill to have a 70-point-plus getter on their roster, and now the Devils are able to have Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, and hopefully Timo Meier long-term, players who are capable of getting over 70 or so points. So just putting that out there. I know the playoffs weren't good, but let's not just exonerate what Bratt was able to do during the regular season, and I'm no exception to it as well. Now, the story might change a little bit for Timo Meier, and we're going to talk about that momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Bird Dogs. So Bird Dogs makes you look good, because Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg and giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so that way you get a slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So I love Bird Dogs just because I'm in Arizona for the time being. It's hot, but I need to look stylish, and Bird Dog shorts does just the thing. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your bird dogs once you receive them. Trust me. And now, let me tell you guys about Game Time. So do you want to see Jesper Bratt and his 8-year extension up close and personal? Well, forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, hockey, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll be able to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Get images of your seat right before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room, and that is Timo Meier and now his contract situation. For the time being, I do not have an update, but I do think Meier, more likely than not, will return to the Devils organization. I'm not really worrying in that regard. Now it's just a matter of how long will he resign for? If you guys are worried about Timo Meier, he will return in a Devils sweater come next year at least. That's worst case scenario, and I talked about it in a previous episode. The Devils will own his right for one more season, but the risk is that if that qualifying offer is accepted, then Timo Meier will become an unrestricted free agent come 2024. That's worst case scenario, but I don't think Tom Fitzgerald is going to let that happen. So like I said early on in the episode, the Devils have about $26.4 million in cap space remaining after the Jesper Bratt deal. Prior to Bratt re-signing with the organization, they had about $34 million in available cap space. I've been saying that the openings are there, and now that one of the biggest domino pieces has fallen in regard to the Bratt extension, now it opens the door for Timo Meier to sign his extension. And people are wondering, how much money is Timo Meier going to demand? Could he demand for $8 million, $9 million, $10 million? Because I've been hearing all sorts of predictions on NHL Network and also a few other NHL journalists in the business. But my thing is I am willing to go over Jack Hughes' annual threshold for Timo Meier. And here's why. Just to reiterate, because Meier brings something a little different to the organization, because I always said that Bratt's production is in fact replaceable. But for Meier, he's not replaceable, because if he's not scoring, if he's not racking up the points, he's bringing the physicality, which was desperately needed, especially in the first half of the Devils season. Why do you think the Devils were able to make it past the first round against the New York Rangers and play a bit of mind games on them? It was because Meier played a huge X-factor role, and Meier was really the only consistent point getter in the second series against the Hurricanes. So I don't think Meier was a disappointment during the playoffs. I don't think he was a disappointment during the regular season. It's difficult for a player to adjust to a new system. But I said once he watches film over the summer, once he comes to training camp, once he gets accustomed in preseason, I think Meier will get back to being a little bit more consistent come the new year. And I am willing, once again, to go over that Hughes threshold a little bit for Timo Meier's sake, because I said this in a recent episode. Last offseason, the Devils were interested in Matthew Tkachuk. They were interested in Johnny Gaudreau. Hypothetically, if either Gaudreau or Tkachuk signed with the Devils organization, or if Tkachuk was traded to the Devils organization for his case, if they were on the Devils roster, they would have been paid more than Jack Hughes. And right now, Dougie Hamilton is making more money than Jack Hughes, for your information. So my thing is I think Meier is that player you can go high up a little bit. And Lindy Ruff has even acknowledged this, saying that Meier just brings something that a lot of other players on the roster cannot due to their stature. And will he get back to being a 40-goal scorer? Will his numbers go up? Well, same thing I said for Bratt. I don't really know, but I just want Meier to accept his role and be able to be an automatic goal for us if we need it. But the one thing I need from him is just that physicality, especially on the offensive end, if the Devils want any chance of success come the new year, and if they want to try to make it further in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So the openings are there once again. The Devils have $26.4 million in cap space remaining. They can afford to re-sign Timo Meier, Eric Haula, a few other players. I think Nathan Bastian and Michael McLeod might have to take a pay cut. I'm just speculating. I can't confirm or deny that, so take that with a grain of salt. But you definitely got to pay them because they definitely earned themselves a decent-sized contract, and we definitely need our depth pieces back. But at the end of the day, there's plenty of cap space for the Devils to maybe have somewhat still of a impactful offseason. It just might fall under the radar because obviously the top priority was to get rid of Damon Severson, also re-sign Jesper Bratt, and now to re-sign Timo Meier. And Tom Fitzgerald is so close to getting past the finish line, and we're still in mid-June? Because I remember we were speculating all this in May, June, July, last offseason as to whether or not Jesper Bratt was going to re-sign, and it finally got done in mid-June, just a couple days after the Stanley Cup final came to a close. So that's my thoughts on the Jesper Bratt contract. I think it was a decent deal for Devils because I think they met somewhere in the middle. Jesper Bratt was probably demanding for $8.5 to $9 million. I'm sure Tom Fitzgerald was trying to re-sign him anywhere from maybe even as low as $6 million to $7.5 million. And I'm sure they came to an agreement. They came to a medium zone, and they were able to get the deal done. So I'm happy that Jesper Bratt is back with the Devils organization long-term. Drama is over. Speculation is over. Bratt is here to stay for the long haul, and he is a part of the Devils' young core in order for them to see success for years on end. And now we got to get Timo Meier back. So let me know what you guys think about the Jesper Bratt extension. Are you happy with it? Are you disappointed? Do you wish that maybe the Devils would have traded away Bratt to maybe get a first-round draft pick or someone else who was probably available via trade? I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, so leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4 or the show Twitter page at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you, so continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again. You might cringe at this, but I just got to do this one time because one of Bratter's nicknames is the Brat Man. So I just got to do this. I'm Brat Man, and I'm here to stay.